उस्ताद कलीम शर्मा जी, अहलन व सहलन, बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका. All right, you're doing it. To catch you on my live. All right. वाह वाह. बधाई हो बधाई. I'm just sharing this un momento. Just see. It's going so slow. Oh, there it is. All right. Share. لحظة. Almost done. वाह, हो गया बाबा, हो गया. राश, अहलन व सहलन, उमर, अनीस जी, खवातीन और हजरात. All right. And Maj is in the house, people. Our IT technician is in the house, in case we have any IT issues going on. So, inna alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadi alladhina artada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله عليكم أهلا وسهلا بكم مرحبا بخير راغلة bienvenidos a todos Huanying lights and people swagatam. Alright, so yes, I was early. I'm doing it Sunday night. I thought, what the hell, Chalo, you know what it is, you got to be a step ahead of the people. You can't let people predict your next move. That's what it is, people. I read it somewhere on a meme, so I thought, well, that's a good, smart thinking, that is. So I thought, what the hell, let's dazzle the people. So, right, so what is going on? Asim saying, I was watching your Andalus lectures. All right, shukran, much appreciated, people. So, what is all the fitan and fasad about, people? Let there be fitan. Let there be fasad. That's one thing that you can always be certain of. No matter what's going on, there will always be fitan and fasad. So, at least we can stay true to that. So this live session, by the way, is for tomorrow. I have certain preoccupations, so I can't do it tomorrow night. So samjhe ke chalo aaj raat kar lete hain. Let's do this tonight, people. Why procrastinate? I read somewhere, why procrastinate? So chalo, I thought, why not act upon what I read? So what the hell? It's Sunday afternoon. It's Sunday night. People are confused. I know, yeah. I like to confuge the people, you know. I like to keep everybody on their toes. You know what I'm saying? It's all, you can't predict what Mufti will do next. I'm only messing, people. It's only a day early. What the hell? So anyway, there's a hell of a lot going on today. I wanted to talk about, are you going to Bradford Sharif on Monday? Not that I know of. Unless there's something happening in Bradford. What's going on in Bradford? I know there's always some drama going on in Bradford, but what are your thoughts on Imam Asim? Hi. Let me do the, you know, the Pakistani, you get some of the Pakistani elders, when they hear some shocking news, they go, I thought, why stick the tongue out and bite the tongue? Toba, 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 toba. This is the fasad going on. We're going to be talking about that in my Mufti Masala segment. I'll be looking at what is going on with our bechara Mariz Muhabbat. Ishq kamina. Don't worry, many lay slain in this path of love. Imam Asim won't be the first nor the last. There's so many that are laying in this path. So we'll come back to that a little later on. I'll also be looking at this, what is this new I mean, I say new as in it's been surfacing recently about the whole qira'ah, the Quran, the Sana'a manuscripts, kind of, it's not really a controversy, but it's being presented as a controversy. So I'll speak a bit on that. Not by Sana, I don't mean that Sana G. That is, there's also a Sana apparently involved in. I don't get the confused, you know. I don't mean Sana, a girl's name. Yeah, there might become another controversy here. I've got to be clear, you know. Both nazuk hai yaar, you know. I gotta watch how I tread and where I walk, and both mushkil hai. It's very difficult. So I mean the Sana'a from Yemen, the Sana'a manuscripts. So we're going to come to that as well, discuss what is going on with Sana'a G over there and the whole controversy. But what else? First of all, people, what is going on? What is going on? How have people? What's the news amongst the people? What's preoccupying the amazing people of Facebook? Right. So, boy, first of all, I felt the chilly winds today, I'm telling you. Wow. Chahe. I felt I gotta say, the chilly winds. I was like, it's gonna snow. Let it snow. It's gonna snow. I know. Snow. So, well, there's that. What else is going on? Anything interesting? First of all, I'll take a look at your concerns. What preoccupies the amazing, beautiful people of Facebook? Ever hungry for gossip. But what preoccupies their minds and thoughts? And I'll also be, in terms of politics, people, we haven't got anywhere, have we, with this whole Brexit situation? What is Theresa May up to, seriously? Somebody needs to have a word with her, you know. She needs to just put it back to the people. That's what I say. Put the vote back to the people. Power to the people. So, what else is going on? Let me just bring up some of your amazing questions, people. Let's see, what if some of us have got jobs to go to tomorrow. Yeah, what are jobs? What is work? Yeah. Live life. What's life if not lived on the edge? That's what I say. And then I end up in the controversies that I end up in. What controversy, man? What controversy? So, هل قابلت الشيخ من؟ الشيخ التجاني. الشيخ التجاني. Which Sheikh Tijani? Sheikh Nisa? I've met Sheikh Nisa, what is it? Probably about, was it 2 years ago or something like that? I met him in London. Sure, I mean, I don't know too much about him, but I know some people know him much better, and they're better people to inform you and get you in touch. People like Mustafa Briggs. Alright. Mustafa Briggs is quite closely connected, so he's a better person to fill you in. Right, so, and Momo is in the house. Momo can also fill you in if you're trying to reach out to Sheikh Tijani. Right, so what else, people? Give me some interesting questions, you know. Interesting questions. What's this? You just... I'm from Kenya. Abdullah Samir, by the way, commented on my last video clip by saying, I'm from Kenya, not Pakistan. Alright, by the way, I stand corrected. I did not know. No lo sé, no lo sé. I took a guess. Tukka lagaye the. I took a guess and chalo. My apologies. My bad. My bad. Right, so what is going on, people? Let me take some questions that you guys have already submitted. People say I don't answer their questions otherwise. And I'm here to serve. I'm here to do the khidmah, the khidmah, the special khidmah. The massage type. Oh no, oh no, not the. Sorry. I mean the other khidmah for the ummah. I'm here to do that khidmah. What else is going on? What else? Mufti, Sunday nights are inconvenient for many Muslims as we're just coming out of Sunday night mass from the church. That's our good friend Yasser Kasana. आज बहुत अच्छा दिन है by Abdul Salam. जरूर 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 किसी what does Ghalib say? किसी is it Brahmin ने कहा है कि ये साल अच्छा है, that this is a good year. Are you changing the day so it doesn't become bid'ah? Elizabeth, I'm not sure I'll be able to make it. Sunday night is housework night. All right, but I take it Elizabeth is in the house. People, doing it. Isa Ali is confused. What do you think of the Imam Asim? I'm going to come back to that. Somebody said Qadianis claim that Allama Iqbal said if someone wants to see true Islam, go and see in Qadian. This one sound like blag, Let me, where's my... This one sound like... That one sound like blag, Or maybe he said it, after a little night cup. Allama Iqbal Sahib, maybe he got a little, he said... he was a little on the edge. And he thought, well... Okay... Can you talk about the 7 and 10 qira'at? I'm going to talk about the qira'at later on. What's happening with Imam Asim? Boy, there's a lot of concern about Imam Asim Sahib. I knew you couldn't miss us that long. Hell no, Ayub. Hell no. Look. Can you see my heart beating? That's my heart beating for you guys, man. Alright, so it's not Monday, Robin. Hell no, it's not. And can you speak about seeing Allah in the afterlife? Doesn't make rational sense. Well, the afterlife. Actually, that's a good question because I read somewhere. Boy, I came across this website. Somebody sent me a link to this website where I think they're ex-Muslims, not the popular ones, but some guy, I don't know, but he's just got a collection of all the most bizarre hadith that he can find, and he's and he's rating, he's like presenting them as I think 300, maybe a day for each hadith for a day of the year, but in order he's ranked them as in the most bizarre coming down. Some people have some fascinating time on their hands. So he's done this, and somebody sent me a link to it. So I went on there. Boy, he's got some wacko things on there, honestly. But the thing is, most of those hadith, not most, I think outright overwhelmingly most are not actually correct or sahih or... But then because he's found some scholar who said they're sahih, he's kind of, so-and-so said it, and they're mocking, and, so the whole thing. But on there was a discussion about heaven. And somebody had said, Christians were quite intelligent in keeping the afterlife quite vague. But Muslims kind of messed up in describing it so much that it became nothing but a projection of 7th century men. So I thought, well, that's an interesting question. So why not, So I thought, well, let's take a little stab at that one. Which reminds me, there's another question somebody had asked about if God is so. I'll read it out actually. I'll read it out in a while. But first of all, this question: heaven and its imagery that is mentioned in Islam, is this but just a projection of 7th century men? Well, look, I've already said, first of all, so those of you that have a chance, you can watch my clip on YouTube where I speak about the description, the imagery in about hell and heaven mentioned in the Quran. I already mentioned that, look, the Prophet said heaven or the afterlife or these things are nothing even conceivable. He said that مَا لَا عَيْنٌ رَأَتْ وَلَا أُذْنٌ سَمِعَتْ, that no eye has seen, no ear has heard. But then more importantly, وَلَا خَطَرَ بِبَالِ بَشَرٍ قَطْ, and no human can conceive of it. So then this begs the question, what is all this imagery in the Quran then? The imagery in the Quran was simply there as a motivational tool for the first recipients of the Quran. That's all it was. I mean, if it helps somebody, fine, but it's not actually meant to be a literal reflection of the afterlife. The afterlife is incomprehensible. So that is what I've said before, and I've given examples and of things like that. Like, so for example, mentioning things like shade. Why shade? Because the Arabs obviously would long for shade. Whereas, you know, if Islam was revealed in, I don't know, some North Europe or in, I don't know, Greenland or somewhere freezing, then obviously speaking about the shade would be quite meaningless, because to those people, that's the last thing they want. So the Quran, when it was addressing the first community, it was addressing them as a primary recipient of the Quran. From them, the rest of the people are by extension. So there are things in the Quran that we read today that don't have necessarily the same relevance to us today, but it's important for us. They still have a deeper message that's still relevant. So you know, so for example, you can read the verses about the afterlife. You understand that Allah is telling you that it doesn't stop here. He's telling you that there is something. He's telling you that whatever it is will be wonderful. He's telling you that there will be, you know, that it is worth the struggle. He's telling you all these things. But then the actual description that is deployed, that is used, is something that was time specific. More so, if others relate to it, alhamdulillah. If they don't, then that's not a literal description of the afterlife. Some Muslims may disagree with that. I'm not saying they don't. But that's something I had explained ages ago. And there are many mufassirin that, for example, when you read things like verses like where Allah says in the Quran that, you know, that those people will have a Jannah, they will have a paradise, عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The width of this Jannah will be as far as what the heavens and the earth, this kind of vastness. So many people, Fakhruddin al-Razi, you'll get Ibn Ashur, all these people will say this is not a literal. This isn't that if you measured, you would know the exact width. This was just there to give some kind of symbolism to people about the vastness and to kind of encourage them. So they mentioned that on these kind of verses of the Quran. So just to clarify, the afterlife was not meant to be, in my understanding, the verses that are there were just simply motivational tools and impetus for the people that would receive it so. Because, you see, the first community were a make or break deal. If they made it, Islam made it. If they didn't, Islam would have just died with them. So they were the most important people, and then everybody else as well, but by extension. So that's, I hope that makes some sense, and people may disagree with that. And that same goes with the fire. You know, I've explained these things, that this is something, and I've got a video on the etymology of the term Jahannam and how it comes from the term Gehannam, and Gehinnom, the valley of the people of Hinnom. And when Jesus had first used this phrase, and the Israelites in Judea, the kingdom of Judea, that what was this valley, and what, you know, where they used to dump trash and keep things on fire and burn it, and why did Jesus use that reference, and then how this gets later picked up and people use it as a reference for a detriment of the afterlife. So whereas the Jews prior to that had no specifics on the afterlife. Okay. Right, so I hope that makes some sense and it sheds some light. Once again, it doesn't have to, it may not do it for all, but what the hell? Not that there's something necessarily wrong about certain descriptions. I'm not saying that, by the way. I'm just saying that the descriptions were aimed at a particular recipient community. There's nothing wrong with harems and harems of beautiful hoods. I'm sure all men will conquer. Sorry, all straight men. All straight men and lesbians will conquer. Anyway, what's going on? So that's that. I'll take this other heavier question that somebody had asked, and I'll explain just a brief response. All right, okay. One moment. All right, I had posted it. Oh, right. Something, you gotta be wary of some of these groups as well. You can't just open anything on one. I always try to make sure I don't save things on learning from experience, from experience. So, what's going on? Come on. All right, so here was a question that it's basically the old question dealing with that, if God is all powerful and if he is these things and if he's omnibenevolent and omnipotent, and then how is there evil, and the whole that whole theology, looking at that, which they refer to in the past as a theodicy, trying to reconcile these things. So the question was, the concept of God and religion appears to be foolish and incoherent. Why would an omnipotent being create anything at all? Why would that being then create evil? Why would he create Satan, knowing he's going to become his enemy? Why would he then create humans and tell us our real purpose is merely to worship him and blindly obey an omnipotent, omniscient being? Why would God tell us that he really loves us but then torture and burn those who don't love him back? How can God be the most merciful yet send natural disasters that kill thousands of innocent people? Why would God purposefully design a reality that is hell-bent on confusion? Just look at the thousands of conflicting religions claiming divine origins. Why would he purposefully hold back evidence and only do the best of his miracles in the pre-scientific era of ignorance? Why would he communicate with us via books and not something more infinitely reliable and trustworthy medium that isn't prone to human fallibility? What the hell, people? Here we need that Sheikh Asrar's clip. You have 1 minute. Explain yourself. That would be the perfect kind of clip to go in there. Okay, I give you 2 minutes. Explain yourself. So there's a hell of a lot of questions there. I mean, whoa. So the person had said, look, what is the answer? And it's, look, I did respond by saying that, look, first of all, this depends more so on what your definition of answer is. Okay, so just to begin, right, right, so just to try to tackle some of this response, it depends on answer, because in my understanding, God does not provide concrete, like concretized kind of proofs or things like this, because then it wouldn't be faith. That is in my understanding. Now, you could critique that. You could say, well, he ought to. But I understand that. That's a statement. But then it wouldn't be much of a faith if it was simply, here it is. It's a fact. Here it is. Everybody's got a text message from God. And, if you want to call him back, you can just call him back and say, is this you? oh, yep, it's you. Okay, cool. It's not really much of a faith, is it? It's not really. The thing I want to highlight here is, this thing of evil. If God was all powerful, if he was all these things, then why would he create evil? Now, I've explained in the past that God has not created evil. Okay. This, unfortunately, Muslims have and other theologians have kind of messed this up, and they've blamed it on God. Okay. The truth of the matter is that there's two kinds of evils that are mentioned here in this text. So, and these are the common natural evil and kind of moral evil, like human evils. So natural disasters, earthquakes, things like that. The other thing is human evil. So, sorry, with the natural, they will also put things like diseases and, I don't know, cancer and all sorts is part of that natural evil. The human evil, like killing people, massacre, robberies, everything, atrocities, violence, all of that, they'll put into human evil. So why has God created this? Now, the truth is that God hasn't created it like that. Okay. First of all, human beings have free will and they are responsible for their own actions. The natural evils are simply a system of nature, the laws of nature in operation. So, for example, earthquakes are simply tectonic plates that have certain shifts. And the way the whole climate change takes place over thousands and thousands of years, this is all part of nature. It's the way the globe has been set up to deal and to produce and to thrive. It has to have, nature plays in that way. Now, human beings may have gone and settled close to where there is a volcano, for example. Now, when the volcano erupts, that's not saying, God has done this evil. That was already there in nature. It was something that this is how nature behaves. Now, some human beings reside close to that and others don't. So, the fault here comes from certain clergymen, certain men of the so-called cloth, who decide to say when these tragedies happen that was God who did that. So that is the problem. That was not God. Yes, they are laws in nature. You can say ultimately these laws were created by God, but that was for nature to operate. Okay, it wasn't created like that. It's like saying that you create a machine with a purpose. You create a car with a purpose. Now, to say, somebody runs somebody over in a car, that was not the purpose of the vehicle. But yes, people may misuse it. That's from a human side. But here, human beings may settle close to these things and thereby get caught. Now, one could say, we accept that is not God's doing. But then why doesn't God intervene? This is a different question. Now, this is not one about, God did these things, but this is, why didn't God stop the harm from hurting these people? Divine intervention. And the system is, generally speaking, God does not intervene at that level. There isn't divine intervention at that level, at the scene level. And I accept that these are very intricate and complex kind of things to sometimes grapple with. I have explained in the past that I do believe in divine intervention, but I've said that there is a strata, there are layers to this thing. And there is the utmost layer, which is the realm of the apparent, which is where things are happening right now and we are observing them. This, when it comes to divine intervention, in my understanding, reflects something close to the quantum realm. Where if you look at quantum mechanics and quantum physics, you will have the Copenhagen interpretation that when you observe the quantum world, it collapses. So the quantum world does operate, but it can't be observed when in operation. And if you try to observe it, it collapses. And that's scientifically proven. So now, in a similar way, I do believe that there are layers of divine intervention taking place, but not in the observed realm. Like we know, it's like I've broken my arm. Oh God, fix this for me now. Here I'm watching. It doesn't work like that. That's in my understanding. Okay, so that's this thing of naturally occurring kind of calamities. Things like diseases are a result and a product of just life per se. Now you will have, for example, since the agricultural revolution, human beings, because of densely created populations, because of coexistence with animals, because of these things, we have obviously caught a lot of diseases over the thousands of years, and then we've built up resilience to them as well. Okay, but in the process many people have died, but that's because these things get transferred. The virus, it will transfer from host to host. It will land on human beings and they will try to fight it. But these are not things that God is doing. Human beings will, for example, try subjugate an animal species. They will kind of live closely with it. Then they will catch a disease that is not, it may be benign, to the animal, but to the human being it will be, it will be malignant. So, and things like cancer are cell malreproduction. So our cells are always reproducing. They need to reproduce in order to keep us healthy. DNA needs to operate in that way. Okay, the RNA, things like this, they need to reproduce. Now, when you've got millions of cells reproducing, the chances of some that malreproduce is also an important part of nature, which initially was there to support things like evolution. Now, yes, that has a byproduct, like in human beings, our cells malreproduce so often, but our immune systems kill them off. But on some occasions they can't, and it results in harmful diseases. But this is not something by God. It's not God is doing this to this person. God is giving these people cancer. God is giving... He's not. Okay? And I feel that religious people have really unfairly represented God. Right? They've unfairly represented God. And what they've done is they've thrown God under the bus as some kind of, and this happens a lot actually, as some kind of justification. So that's that. And when it comes to the human side of things, you have to understand that human beings have free will. And they have to have free will. But the problem with that is when it's not exercised well, it results in calamities, it results in tragedies. Human beings can be atrocious. I mean, we can be, like as Freud said, and I think well said, that man is more moral than he thinks, yet far more immoral than he can imagine. And I kind of agree with Freud, with Allama Freud, one of my favorites. Freud was also a legend in his own way, right? So I agree with what Freud is trying to say here. And so, yes, human beings can, and Allah mentions that in the Quran, that look, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, that we created human. And some people just said, oh, this was in the sense of our physical appearance. And I think, sure, I mean, I'm not denying that human beings have, they have capabilities, physical capacities to kind of do things, the way our fingers work, the way things work, the way our brain works. Yes, I'm not denying any of that, but I don't think that that's what the verse was primarily saying. I think the verse was saying that ahsan taqweem, that in the most benevolent of kind of manifestations or structure in terms of potential, that what this human is capable of doing is up there. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ, that then we returned, like we allowed him with this capacity as well, out of free will for him or her, that he can be ahsan taqweem or asfal as-safilin, or amongst the lowest of the low. Now this spectrum in between, human beings kind of move through it. Are we, in essence, fallen angels? Or are we dignified apes? That is the that is the journey in between, I guess. So I think that this whole thing, that it's human beings who then cause these things, that they create concentration camps, that they create, no species before us has ever committed genocide, so to speak. I mean, we solely hold that kind of throne of what human capabilities are. But at the same time, no species has really, managed to fathom to some extent the cosmos, or flown to the moon, or, created such technology. And I think this is the amazing thing of insan. So, and the poem that, زَعَمْتَ أَنَّكَ جِرْمٌ صَغِيرٌ وَفِيكَ أَنْتَ وَالْعَالَمُ الْأَكْبَرُ. That, you state that you're just a small being, yet inside you is this grandiose world hidden within you as a human. As in, or in the words of Aziz Mia, Adami hai benazir. Right. Or in the words of somebody else, Bari kutti cheez hai. That's what insan can be. The capability. So my point here of answering this was that, look, and God didn't create us. This verse is so wrongly said that, ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun, except that they create me. This except is wrongly translated. It's that I did not create them, and as a consequence, they worship me. It's not that I did not create them to only do this, worship me. That's wrongly, in my understanding, interpreted by people. So I hope that sheds some light on some of these things. In terms of why did God not create certain, continue to send, prophets and things like this. Well, God, in our understanding, he seals the deal with the final prophet and messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I think it is testament, it stands as a testimony to Islam in that way. Whether you like Islam or you don't like Islam, whether you agree with it or disagree with Islam. But it is unquestionable that Islam, as far as world faith was concerned, Islam sealed the deal. And there was never to be, after the faith of Islam, a global faith to emerge that could ever rival such a force and such a kind of a power of faith ever. And that is, in my understanding, a testimony to the verse of the Quran that al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum, that on this day you shall see that faith will have become complete. And people said, does this mean rulings? Does this mean this? Does this mean that? No, that's, to me, stupid. Rulings and this and that and fiqh, and of course not. In my understanding, that what God was saying is that as far as the human journey has begun, maybe 70,000 years ago, for modern man with the cognitive revolution out of Africa, globalize, spreading and colonizing the earth, since this journey began, global, and along the way, I'm sure there's been many traditions and many kind of versions or perspectives of faith. But now it has kind of sealed the deal. And I think that, to me, is a powerful kind of message about Islam. And like I said, you don't have to agree with Islam to accept that. So other religions have tried to emerge, but never could they ever do anything like Islam. So I know Sikhism and some other religions did emerge after Islam, but it could never bring about such a force of faith, such a kind of global community, spread across the globe, touch the hearts of millions. I think that ship has sailed. So that's my understanding on that. I hope it's of some help. Right, so people, let's what shall we move on to? I know it's getting late and people do have work as well, and I'm obviously taking questions, and a lot of people are waiting. Shall we get the Sana'a manuscript thing out the way first, and then we'll come to the Mufti Masala section. Have you watched Punisher season 2? I haven't actually. You know, I just subscribed to YouTube Premium just to check it out for a month. I don't know if that's useless or what, but right. So, what else is going on? Right, I'll take some questions as well, but I'll look at this Sana'a manuscript thing. Yaar, kahan gaya? Where's it gone? Any other interesting? Turning into Jia behkarar hai, chai bahar hai. Somebody's written that. Hi. Right. So let's look at what is this Sana'a manuscript thing going on. So okay, let me give you some backdrop to all of this, right? What is going on? Well, people, right, so, well, this whole issue begins with in Yemen. Okay, so, in the 70s, they were, I don't know, reconstructing or working on some masjid in Sana'a. Sana'a is the capital of Yemen. This is not the name of some girl. Sana'a, this is Sana'a, right? So this is where the great legends like you get Imam San'ani and these great people were from. Okay, so what's happened anyway is that whilst reconstructing or working on the dome in Sana'a, they found a whole bunch of kind of old manuscripts kind of stuck in some loft section. So they've taken them out, and it's quite common. This is nothing shocking, by the way, because a lot of the time in the past, when people wanted to dispose of, let's say, certain sacred texts and things like this, it's very likely that they would just collect them and maybe put them away somewhere high, like in the dome, in a section, and then maybe with time burn them or do something once they've got a certain amount. Now, what's happened is here, obviously, they've just left them and presumably forgotten about them. Now, right, they've just forgotten about them. So what's happened is in 1972 or whenever it was, they've discovered these things, pulled them out. They've realized a certain amount of them. There's quite a few pages, but there's different things. But in some, they've said that they've realized this is the Quran. Okay, or page, it's not the complete Quran. Some people say it's pretty much a lot of Surah Tawbah there. Some people have said, I think they may be up to something like, I think 80 pages or something like this worth. By the way, these are not pages like these kind of pages. These are parchments. So things like ancient, initially cloth, like cloth, but it's actually taken from animal hide. So animal skin that was used to write on. So that was one method that people used to write on. So they found a lot of these. And then anyway, to cut all that story short, they called in some experts, and the experts thought, well, this sounds interesting. So they put all this stuff on microfilm, and then there was all this long legal battle going on with the Yemeni government. But anyway, I think in the 90s, the German experts were allowed to release those these microfilms or whatever it was, and they started to research these manuscripts. Now, these manuscripts had like I said, verses of the Quran on them, which is nothing so surprising. But when it got interesting was that they realized that these this writing, these verses of the Quran, they had like a shadow effect underneath them. So it appeared that beneath them there seems to have been something written before that was obviously then wiped clean and then rewritten. So the writing they have on there is not the earliest writing on that parchment. Okay. And this, once again, is nothing new. So in the past, like in ancient Arabia, because writing was not big anyway, and there was no such thing as paper, what people would do is write on these parchments, write on animal skin, and because if they needed to rewrite something, what they would often do is wash it clean or wipe it clean and write on it again. So this is common practice. I mean, it's nothing so unusual up until this point. Then what happens is, using the latest technological equipment, they've managed to kind of extract the undertext. So the lower text has managed to be, so they've using computer visualization, they've got it, managed to extract it using certain lighting techniques and things like this. I think they've used like ultraviolet rays and things like this, but they've managed to extract the lower text. So the lower text is also appears to be the Quran. Right now, okay. So up until here, that seems okay. It gets a bit more interesting that the lower text of the Quran seems to be different to the current understanding of the Quran in some ways. So this has become known as the Sana'a manuscript, and they also call it a bloody hell, a palimpsest, right? I believe palimpsest is what it's called as well. Rather. So that's a document that is, I say document, but a parchment that has been kind of wiped clean and then reused. They call that a palimpsest. Now, anyway, so if you see these words being thrown around, you know what they're speaking about. Okay, rather one must be rather academic. So this has had there's a couple, Dr. Mr. and Mrs. Quinn, I believe they are called. And they're German, so they've had an ample amount of opportunity to do research on this Sana'a manuscript, and they've written their thesis on this. Then there's a few other people that have specialized on this. There is a doctor, female doctor, Asma Hilali, who has done her work on this and released an actual book called the Sana'a palimpsest. And she's kind of discussing that, or the Sana'a manuscript, I think she may have called the book. Then there is a Dr. Sadeghi, who's also quite an expert on this, and a Dr. Wadarzi. So these are the main people who have worked on this Sana'a manuscript. They've produced theses that are available. You can find their documents online if you go there, but they are academic kind of works. They're not like your everyday kind of reads. So what are the conclusions so far, and what is this controversy? So a lot of people have picked this up and said, aha, the Quran was wrong, because look, this was a pre-Uthman, this is one of the earliest versions of the Quran, and it's different to the Quran you guys have got. Ha 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 ha. So that's what seems to be going on a lot online. Right, so right guys, if you can pay attention, don't troll please. I can see some messages about some people trolling. I'll just say, right, so okay, right, don't worry, I've got the admin team on it. Mock and block crew are on there. Anybody trolling, block them and blast them into oblivion. Right, so coming back to this, so now, okay, this is the issue. What are the concerns? Let's bring up the concerns first. The concerns have been by certain ex-Muslims, certain Christians, that we have stumbled upon an ancient, early version of the Quran that Muslims have deviated from. And this shows the Quran was changed. And this shows that the Quran that Muslims have got today is not the real Quran. This is what the claims are. Okay. Now, I'd like to show, first of all, responding to this, and I'll bring in some of the research from these key contributors. So Dr. Elizabeth Quinn, she she states in an academic way that yes, like looking at this, I feel, she's saying she feels that the Quran was almost a work in progress. So she feels that people wrote the Quran, then with time they decided to, actually we should touch up on this point here. Then they kind of modified it. Then with each generation they continued to, so it was an evolving process. This is her conclusion. Now, that is not the conclusion, by the way, of the other expert researchers like Sadeghi or people like Ghadarzi or people like Asma Hilali, who've not said that at all. So, right, so now let's look at the facts, what we do have. Right, first of all, one thing we need to understand very clearly before beginning, that is that the Quran has been part of the Muslim living tradition. Okay, we have many manuscripts of the Quran that are very old, okay, including like the Birmingham manuscript that was found in Bromtown, people, right, dating back to the 1st century of Islam. Now this that they found, the Sana'a manuscript, also dates back to the 1st century of Islam. So they're not sure where, they're putting it somewhere, like they feel it may have been written anything between 30 years after the Prophet to maybe it was written 60 years after the Prophet, anything in between that they kind of, and they've done that by dating the actual, I think it was deer skin that it was written on. So anyway, and there are other manuscripts of the Quran that are also very, very classic in that sense, date back to the 1st century of Islam. So it's not that this is the only manuscript they found, okay, to start off with. Secondly, we understand that the Quran was part of the living tradition within Islam. So all communities, wherever they went, that was the one thing they took with them. Hadith was not documented till almost 100 years after the Prophet at least, okay. In the whole first 100 years, the only documentation that Muslims were really doing was the Quran. The only thing they were really making sure that it was taught from father to child was the Quran. Hence, I've explained in other topics and discussions as well, why was the Quran difficult to corrupt? I've explained that because it was difficult because it was so widespread. To the nature of the Quran is it doesn't go into so much details about so many things. So if you are trying to corrupt it, what message would you try to put in? And the message that you try to put in has to match the style, the nazm of the Quran, the flow of the Quran. It has to go with the surahs. It has to go with those verses. And then everybody's reading the Quran everywhere. They're reading it in their salah. They complete it in Ramadan. You see, it's too widespread. Like it's not the results, the investment. There ain't much return on investment. If you see what I mean. Like if you were trying to corrupt a religion, the return on investment is too little here. So it's easier for you to corrupt the hadith. It's easier, and hence I'm not saying all hadith are corrupt, but what I'm trying to say is that hence you had a lot of fabricated hadith emerge because it was easier to do that. So right, so these things so far are facts. Now I would like to highlight that, look, this finding does not show that this was an evolution in progress. Or the Quran was, for example, a working model, that people were working on it and changing it. Why? And allow me to explain. And that is that Muslims already accept and believe. We already believe, right, that when the Quran was revealed, it was revealed with some kind of fluidity. Okay. Now, we don't truly understand that fluidity today, except that we know from the hadith, that there were different ways to read the Quran. And we have a hadith that the Prophet saw some companions reading in a certain way, and Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an grabs the person and brings him to the Prophet and says to him that, what the hell, you're misreading the Quran. And the Prophet says, let him read, and he reads it, and then the Prophet says, okay, now you read and he says, I've read it like this, and the Prophet says, well, both are correct. Now, and he says that the Quran is read in multiple kind of ways. Now, what's interesting is that we know that this was happening. Okay, so this did happen, that there were multiple kind of recitation. And these are not, by the way, the 7 recitations we have today. This is not speaking about that. Although that could be part of it, but that's not what it's speaking about. And I'll explain why. So, look, now, that's one thing we have. Another thing we have already in our books, in many hadith books, so for example, in things like you're going to have Bukhari, Muslim, all these kind of other hadith books, Tirmidhi, you're going to have hadith where you will read that, okay, certain companions, that there were 1 or 2 companions that sometimes would disagree with, that they would have what they thought was a correct reading of the Quran in some verses, and they may be mistaken. And that's not... So, I mean, first of all, that's common sense. I mean, it's quite easily understandable, but that did happen. We already have that as part of our tradition. So we know, for example, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu an used to assume that that the dua of qunut, that Allahumma inna nasta'inuka wa nastaghfiruka, like that was part of the Quran. He assumed, because it had a certain rhythm to it, and he saw the Prophet teaching it in such a religious way that he assumed it was part of the Quran, and he had it as a little surah. Other people told him that was actually just a dua, and that was not part of the Quran. Similarly, he assumed that Qul huwallahu ahad, sorry, not Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, which are known as the mu'awwidhatayn, to seek refuge, because they are a dua, he assumed they were just du'as and not part of the Quran. Now, okay, but the companions once again told him that, look, the other people that know these are actually, yes, they are a dua, but they are part of the Quran. Now, this is already part of our tradition. We already know this. This is not a shock. This is like something actually well written and documented in our books. There's transparency about these things. That, in fact, if you read Imam Qurtubi's Muqaddimah, his introduction, which I think I have a kind of explanation of his introduction on YouTube, or it might be on SoundCloud, but where I speak about how some of Imam Qurtubi highlights how some of the Sahaba, even their pronunciation because of the tribes they were from. So he mentions Ibn Mas'ud, for example, being amongst them, and other companions, that they would sometimes swap the Hamza with the Ain because they sound similar. And that's like it was just like a dialectical, like the tribe you were from might do things. So, for example, in English, you get some people, like in the UK, they pronounce the T in certain things as a kind of glottal stop. Like they won't say water, they'll say water. Like so, water, like that. And so that's an example. Like in the Arab world today, you'll have some people who pronounce like the Egyptians will pronounce a jim as a gim. And some people pronounce the qaf as a gaf, like in Saudi and the Gulf. And so like this, even in the Prophet's time, some of the tribes used to do things like that. So they used to, so in Imam Qurtubi's his introduction, he explains this, and he mentions like some of the companions, for example, would swap Hamza with an Ain, and some would swap a Ha with an Ain. So instead of Hatta, they would say Atta, but just because they come from the same kind of position within the throat. So, and this was just the way they spoke Arabic. So these things we already know. It's not that, we're not saying this is like comes as a shock to Muslims. So the question was, what was the general transmission of the Quran? We're not talking about what one person may have written something or somebody else may have omitted a verse. Another important point to remember here, right? Another important point to remember is, you see, for us today, Arabic is something, especially clear, eloquent Arabic, is something we only read in the Quran or in classical poetry. Even for Arabs don't speak classical Arabic. In fact, they don't even read classical Arabic. Even modern standard Arabic, which is proper Arabic, but modern standard Arabic is not eloquent. It's not eloquent. Sorry, it's not eloquent in that style. I mean, they might consider it eloquent for today's standards, but it's not eloquent like classical Arabic. Now, you have to understand that the ancient Arabs spoke like that. So, when you speak in a particular way, and that is how the verses are being revealed. Now, I'm not saying they spoke as eloquently, but they did speak that exact language. Then it's very easy for you to replace words sometimes, because that is your absolute way of speaking. Whereas for us today to change words is still very easy, but it's not as easy, because when we memorize Arabic, we don't normally speak like Arabic like that. So we're not normally speaking Arabic anyway. So Arabic is only our Islamic language. So it's easy to keep that in a separate mental compartment and just memorize it. But for them, this is how they spoke. This is how they used to, do eloquent poetry. They used to do. So for them to sometimes mix up words was much more feasible. Some of them, I'm just saying. Right now, just to give you a kind of backdrop. Okay, so with all of these things in mind. Okay, now. I would explain that Dr. Asma Hilali, in her analysis of these Sana'a manuscripts, she has mentioned that it appears that these manuscripts were most likely personal notes that some person had taken in some study circle. This was her interpretation. And the reason she says this is for two reasons. She says that the person, first of all, when he writes letters like Qaf, now, Qaf, when it's written at the end of a word, it has a tail to it. Okay, when it's written in the middle of a word, it's just a round thing and carries on. So she identified that this person seems to write the Qaf with a tail in certain words in the middle of a word, which doesn't really make sense, because that's not how the Qaf is written in the middle of a word. So from here, she assumes that this person was maybe writing it off with the Qaf and then later adding to it. Like saying, oh, I realized that this word was like this. Another important thing, that Qaf thing I think is okay. I think more interestingly, she points out another point, and this is definitely fascinating, that how the person had written before Surah At-Tawbah. Now, Surah Tawbah does not begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the person had written, La taqul Bismillah. Do not say Bismillah here. So, now that's just a note. So that's actually in this Sana'a manuscript. The person had written before Surah Tawbah. Now well, that's not the Quran. La taqul Bismillah. This is clearly a personal note that somebody is writing. Now, so I would say that, look, with these things, what we have, first of all, I'd like to highlight what is this most likely. So I feel that I'm not so sure whether it was a student documenting it in a study circle like Dr. Asma Hilali has said, but what I think is this is definitely somebody's personal script. It wasn't like, I know Dr. Quinn seems to emphasize she thinks this was some kind of standard manuscript that people were sending out. And there's no evidence for that at all. If anything, this seems to be somebody's personal script, personal copies that they're writing, and they're making some notes. Okay, so like La taqul Bismillah, don't say Bismillah here, don't do this, don't do that. The other thing is, I think that where they've disagreed, so they've made a list, by the way, I won't go through all the things here, but they've made a list of some of the discrepancies, they've said, the variations between this Sana'a manuscript and between how we read the Quran today. And sometimes words are missing. Like, for example, in one it says Allah will punish them, and it says adhaban alima. Like in our reading of the Quran today, it says Allah will punish them a severe punishment. But in theirs, it doesn't say adhaban alima. It just says Allah will punish them. Or in some, it will say things like they're saying that those who do jahadu fi sabilillah, those who do jihad fi sabilillah, bi amwalihim wa anfusihim, with their wealth and money. And in this verse today, in that particular verse, I know in a different verse it does say that, with their wealth and money, jahadu fi sabilillah bi amwalihim wa anfusihim. But in this particular verse, it doesn't say that in the Quran. It just says jahad, those who struggle in the path of God. So there's these kind of discrepancies, and a lot of these people have listed them. They've gone through them. So whether there's like, I think they've highlighted something like 20 to 30 kind of discrepancies that they've found. Now, a lot of them are very small, just like instead of you, it says they, and things like this. But there are words missing as well, stuff like this. So, in my understanding, the truth to this is this is most likely, because we don't have certain knowledge, but we can go by our interpretation, our assessment, that this is most likely somebody. He may have been a companion, he may have been, I'm not denying that, but somebody's personal notes. So somebody seems to have been writing certain verses of the Quran for himself, and this seems to be that. And it seems to be his personal reading, which I feel firstly that he may have been mistaken in, or that may have been his way of what he thought was the Quran. Now, that's most plausible, okay? That's most likely what has happened here. And then maybe a few decades later, what's happened is when they've started to realize, because we know with Uthman as well, radiallahu an, we know that he said that people have started to misread the Quran. So let's standardize and let's bring together the readings of the Quran. And he wrote a particular script. Now his script is still flexible. So because it never had the diacritical marking like the dots, and it never had most of the dots anyway, so some words could be read in different ways. So for example, ya'malun could be read as ta'malun. So because there wasn't the dots, you could read it as ta' or ya, like ya'malun, ta'malun, that they are what the actions they do or the actions you do, that it could be read like that. And this is all part, this Uthmani reading is all one reading of the Quran, even with these variants. Okay, it's not, so we do accept that there were other readings that have then gone, that they were in the time of the Prophet, how they read certain things. We have that in our tradition, but we know that one main reading was locked into for people to be transmitted. And Uthman, he took that endeavor in saying, let's lock it in so people don't get confused and it's easy for people to read. Now, even how he locked it in still had room to read in different variations. Now, this is no hidden knowledge. This is transparent knowledge. Muslims have been saying these things for ages. I mean, it's written in all our books and it's very clear. So people say the 7 ways to read or the 10 ways to read certain things. They're all part of this one way. So Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi highlights that. Okay, so he highlights that in his Mahsul, by the way, as well, and in his other books. So now this is just to be clear about this. So this undertext of the Sana'a manuscript was most likely somebody's personal notes who thought that that reading was how it was. And most likely, I feel that he was mistaken. Why do I feel this? This is most likely what I feel the plausible response. The second response is that it may also be that he was not mistaken, but this was a way to read those verses of the Quran that he learnt from the Prophet. It could be that this was a way that was then locked, wasn't the one that was locked in. It's possible, but I actually feel it was more option A. It was the fact that he was most likely mistaken. Why do I say this? And by the way, in some of these discrepancies, it may be the second thing. It may be that some of the discrepancies were the kind of fluency of how to read. But the first, but some of them, like when he missed out words, I think that was just his mistake, as in he thought that, because remember, language, it was their language, they were doing a lot of other things as well, and it's human error, so that's fine. And we have hadith telling us that the Sahaba sometimes, some Sahaba did misread certain verses. It's, like we all misread verses today. It's nothing so huge. And remember, they were memorizing, and they weren't just sitting down students of knowledge all day. They were people that were in campaigns, military campaigns, fighting for here, traveling the world. They weren't people just sitting with a library behind them and saying, well, let me pull this out. I mean, I've memorized the Quran, and if I read the Quran today, from my memory, I'll make tons and tons of mistakes. I'll need to revise and make sure. And that's natural, it's not. But so I'm just saying, I think that's the most plausible. The second thing, it is true, it may have been that it was another reading that was locked off, and it wasn't locked into when Uthman locked in the recitation. As to this being an evolution of the Quran, as mentioned by Dr. Quinn and mentioned by some ex-Muslims and Christian some preachers and other people as well, and why do I feel that is absolutely wrong? Apart from, obviously, this is going to be biased because I'm Muslim, but why do I feel that? If we look at the discrepancies, let's just look at them. If this was an evolution in progress, like somebody decided, because Dr. Elizabeth and other people suggest that somebody decided to change it, right? So, and especially some of the ex-Muslims have suggested this, and some Islamophobes too have mentioned things like some of the companions purposely decided to change the Quran. Why do I feel that that's absolutely false? Let's look at the discrepancies. The discrepancies have no fundamental. They bring nothing. They don't do any change. Allah is aware of what you are doing. Allah is aware of what they are doing. It makes no. I mean, if I was trying to corrupt the Quran, I would try to corrupt it with a powerful message. If that's what they were trying to do, just changing it by dropping a word that still Allah is going to punish them, and let's just say they drop the word a severe punishment. It doesn't change anything, because in the other verses they're still saying that. So it doesn't really show any purpose, like any purpose-serving kind of alteration. Like if somebody was trying to manipulate the Quran, then surely they would put in a good message to manipulate that they're trying to get across. By changing it with these little pronouns, like I changed it, here Allah, I said Allah knows what, Allah is seeing what they are saying, and here I said what you are saying, ha 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 ha, I changed the Quran. I mean, that's a futile kind of effort, because think about it, people who are trying to, let's say they were purposely trying to change the Quran, that was a life-threatening risk. That let's just be real, if this was what they were trying to do. Why, if they are going to risk it, they're going to risk it for something so meaningful, like to get a message in there, praise their gods, or do something, or to change it with these like petty little differences is meaningless. So to me, that doesn't hold up at all. Okay. So with that, just to summarize that, then I'm going to give a little conclusion. In summary, yes, we acknowledge that the manuscripts do demonstrate that these were from first century Islam. They do demonstrate that there was an undertext and an overtext. They do demonstrate there are discrepancies. They also demonstrate that the discrepancies are not so huge, as in they don't derail the message in any way, right? They're not that substantial, right? They also demonstrate that most likely these were a mistake, that whoever wrote them, he wrote, and these were part of his notes. Why? Because they use words like I said, notes like don't say Bismillah here. That sounds like a very personal note. The other thing is, this may have been, it has some potential that this was one of the writings that was then not locked in. Sorry, one of the readings that was not locked in. It's possible, although I don't believe that to be the stronger interpretation. So that, and in conclusion, I want to add here, this also you know, in a positive spin to this, I want to show a positive spin to this, which people haven't really highlighted. This actually reaffirms for us that the message that we've been passing generally down the generations has been accurate. Because, you know, there's many people who've said, for example, the Quran was actually invented after the 2nd century of Islam. It disproves them. There's many people who have said all hadith have been fabricated. But it proves that in the hadith, it said in certain hadith that certain companions used to make mistakes about certain Quran. Certain companions wrote this, that they used to do this. And that was true. The living tradition told us that Uthman had actually, to get rid of people's kind of debating and whatever, decided to lock in a recitation. Now this is part of our just historic stories. But yet it's true then. Because it shows that there was, and that it seems to have been locked in, or people have tried to work on it. It demonstrates that these things were not fabricated, because some people have said Muhammad was not even a real figure and his companions didn't even really exist, and people afterwards made them up. But it shows that actually, so these things have been true, that Muslims, when they said that there was a Quran and it was there in the 1st century of Islam, it proves that. It said that when Muslims themselves said in our own books that, by the way, that there were various ways of reading the Quran, it was true that Muslims themselves said that certain companions did make mistakes, and, you know, we're going to be honest about that, but they went with a majority reading. That was true. Muslims themselves said that in the time of Uthman, people started to argue and disagree, and Uthman tried to take strategic action to lock in the reading of the Quran. It shows that to be true. So it shows that there is, you know, even those, I'm sure there are many hadiths sometimes that have been misrepresented and are not true and things like this. But it shows a lot of the living tradition, the living stories and things like this that have come down have actually held, you know, throughout the ages. And they've conveyed significant truths, like we're seeing this with modern day technology now revealing and affirming the stories that we've only been reading for decades. So I think that's an amazing spin on this, and it shows that, you know, Muslims have been transparent, and had we covered up these things, then it could have come as a shock. So okay, I hope that's of some help, inshallah. It answers some of these questions. Right, so right, people, inshallah. So any other issues, you can reach out to me. What I will try to do as well is go through some of these in some detail. But it's nothing so substantial to go through. Like I said, the biggest one I could see was the drop of one word, like a severe punishment and things like this. What I said, those who do jihad with their wealth and their lives, like, okay, it had that, you know, it claimed to have had that word, but here it didn't exist in the modern day reading or in the current Quran that we have. But then we know that those wordings do exist in other surahs of the Quran. So it's not that it doesn't exist in the Quran, but just not in that surah. And so it's possible that the person, whilst reading, put it there because it's a common way that it's read in the other verse. So these things do happen. Okay, right, folks. Let's move on. What else have we got? Shall we move on to... Let's move on to this abuse issue, people. Alright, I'm just trying to bring up something here as well. Right, okay, so... Right, so what's been going on? What's going on, people? What's going on? Mayhem. Always controversies, huh? Right, so there's basically this... Abu Mu'adh is in the house. Do you get, Mufti Abu Layth, do you get females creeping into your inbox? I'm not that lucky as these imams. Right, so what's going on, people? Right, so we get... Right, let's... I'm going to also bring up some of these statements. So let me just fill in some of the details. I'm just bringing this up. Right, so people, let me fill you in with some of this. What's been happening is apparently there's been an expose. It's been an expose of Imam. I mean, he's not Imam now, I suppose. People are saying, making a point of this. But anyway, Imam Hussain. Am I mixing up the surname? I'm pretty sure it's Asim Hussain, who was from, I think, Bradford, or he may have been Bradford in London, I'm not sure now. But anyway, it's a young Imam, best known for his Mawlid war debates. So if you remember the Mawlid war between him and Dawaman, I think that really took Imam Asim to some heights. But he's quite popular, did some kind of, I think, very fiery speeches for the youth on stuff like gangsters and that kind of stuff, you know, the usual. Anyway, what has been happening? So apparently he's been exposed for having been being a bit nutty, you know, with a few with a few females. Amongst two, I don't know why, but there's this name Sana, not that Sana, but Sana, or I think there's a few. And so recently Sheikh Asrar has come out and made a statement, and I think Sheikh Saqib Shami has made a statement, or some other people have made a statement about, we held an emergency meeting, emergency cabinet, Cobra meeting. Yeah, chapa. Let's get. Oh no, it's an emergency meeting. Acha. What's the? So wait there. I'm getting ahead of myself. So what's the incident? So there's been some clip of some girl highlighting a case. Okay, the girl in the video clip is not the alleged victim, but she's reading out some messages from this alleged victim. So I think in that particular clip, she's speaking about a girl who's a convert to Islam. And she's saying, well, this convert is saying, you know, well, I got close to this scholar, and, you know, I went to his talks on Mawlid, and I did this and did that, and then he started to do the naughty, you know. How do you... हाथ फिसल जाता है. The hand, it slips, you know, sometimes. So she's saying, well, you know, and then there's been some other people have done some kind of Facebook statements, and some people have said, oh my God, Imam Asim did this, and then there's been this kind of report I've read part of it by, I don't know if it's the same girl or if it's a different girl. I don't know. Yeah. Variety is the spice of life, I tell you. You know what? Where would we be without variety? I tell you, we need the variety. So anyway, I'm not sure if it was another girl. It might have been another girl. So, but she's saying, oh, like basically the same kind of thing, that he's been chatting to me. But what on a side note, not that I want to, first of all, we condemn abuse everywhere. Any forms of abuse, condemn. We, you know, once there was this, like, it wasn't a meme, it was it's made into a meme, but it's an actual poster of somebody, you know, in Pakistan, they're demonstrating. Ugh! And he said, you know, about the USA intervention, he said, we trying to say we condemn this. We condom this. It's just a small spelling mistake. I think some people might be reading those things that, you know, we too, we condom. They're supposed to be condemning. They've been condoming. Look. Yeah, it can easily, you know, spelling mistakes Guys, not being fair to dyslexic people. You have to understand the spelling mistakes can happen. एक नुक्ते ने महरम से मुजरिम बना दिया. You see, like one dot turns the word mahram, that means a close, a halal acquaintance, into a mujrim, into a criminal. See, one nukta. एक नुक्ते ने महरम से मुजरिम बना दिया. हम दुआ लिखते रहे, दुआ, वो दगा पढ़ते रहे. See, dua is dua. I've been making praise for the person, and they've been reading it with a dot, daga, which means like betrayal, dhoka, deception. Yeah, it could be a spelling, but we, first of all, just to clarify, we condemn, not condemn. We condemn all abuse, okay? So all abuse everywhere. That said, I gotta say, some of these allegation stories sound rather interesting, rather like, I'll tell you, any alleged victim that first of all only goes to a publishing house instead of the police, I think the police station is that way, not the publishing house. So, but anyway, look, what I'd like to say, if there's ever abuse, clear abuse, if it's criminal, report it, to the police, police, free phone. Report it to the police, goddammit. So, on a side note, the girl, apparently, one of the things I read, this is what the girl was saying, that, oh, he messaged me to meet him privately in a car a few roads away. So I went there, I sat in the car, and he stroked my face. Hi. Romance chal raha hai. It sounds super romantic, I like it, I was like, okay, note, stroke the face first. I'm sure I saw Sanjay Dutt do that once. So anyway, right. So she says, so she felt uncomfortable. Chalo, theek hai, that's wrong. If obviously she doesn't, not everybody wants their face stroked, yeah. Somebody, if Qadi Saab's stroking my face now, I'm trying to speak. Qadi Saab's like, hey. That's a rather uncomfortable position to be in. So, obviously, she was very unhappy. Rightly so, right? So now she leaves. But what I don't get is then she says, I met up again with him privately. And then I think a bit of the chumma. Chumma de. There was a bit of the, friend. So there's a bit of the kissing, is going on. But then she says, so I was upset again, and then I met him again. What kind of a victim is this? I'm trying to understand. Why is she repeatedly meeting him privately? Then I think the next time, the hand slip on the leg. My hand keeps slipping. It's out of control, this one. So anyway, I want to say, look, what is this repeated? I felt so bad. I thought that was so wrong, and then there I am again, in the car again. Why don't such naive, blessed people? Where do we meet such naive people? Do I have to start doing Mawlid events to meet such people? I'm joking. Anyway, I digress. But look, any abuse, report it. Don't keep going back. What are you searching for? Right? Don't go back. Go report it. So anyway, there's been some hanky-panky going on. And right, so now Sheikh Asrar Ji has our Sheikh Asrar, yeah, our beloved, right? So he has been involved, right? So they held an emergency cabinet meeting. I don't know what these they said it's for the sake of Islam. Even even Islam probably was like, what the hell? My honor. Even the angels were probably like, what's going on? What's going on? Is it the end of times? What's going on? So there was an emergency cabinet meeting held by some of the top dons of the people in the upper elite circles, the Mala'ul A'la of the Brailwi community. So amongst them, apparently in this meeting, was Sheikh Saqib Shami, who it says didn't speak much. And then there was Imam Asim, and then there were some other people. And somebody's done a detailed Facebook report of the meeting, by the way. And Sheikh Asrar has then said, in this meeting, Asim Hussain admitted to the offences and evidence presented before him. And as a result, the following conditions were put into place to prevent further incidents occurring. 1.1. So, Asim Hussain is to refrain from all forms of social media until permitted. Permitted by who? Mark Zuckerberg? Oh no, rather by Sheikh Asrar. Okay. He is to utilize his time in seeking knowledge and developing himself spiritually. You know, he needs to go to a proper Qari Sahib. You know, one that... Qari Sahib, kya kar rahe hain aap? Qari Sahib says, नहीं, यहाँ से हा निकालो, यहाँ से ऐसे मुंह खोलो, ऐसे मुंह खोलो, यहाँ से हा, खा Right, so this one is the Qari Sahib effect, you know, the Qari Sahib. Number 2, he must pray his 5 daily prayers. Huh? What? Pray his 5 daily prayers? Yes. I mean, one, Allah commanded it, but now Sheikh Asrar has commanded it as well. But to aid in this, a brother was appointed to monitor this daily and report back. Somebody has been appointed to monitor Asimji's 5 daily prayers and report back to Sheikh Asrar. Yes, come to me. What news do you have? Yeah. Your Majesty, he was late with his Nafal prayer today. Yeah, what is going on here? What is this? What are these 12 steps of the Alcoholics Anonymous and having a sponsor, having a monitor rather? So this person is to monitor Asim Hussain's 5 daily prayers and report back on everything. Was he standing straight? He has to report to Sheikh Asrar. Number 3, he is to look for a spouse as a priority. I think that's what he was already doing. I think he was already looking for a spouse. Come on, so he was to look for a spouse as a priority. Yeah, I want to get into that number 3. How do we line up for number 3? Sheikh Asrar, Sheikh, can you get us in that line as well? As a priority, you know, you must look as a priority. Number 4, he is to refrain from any contact with غير mahram women. Wow, I love it. You know what? I love this. He is to refrain from all contact. If he approaches a shop and there is a female shop attendant, he must at that point distance himself immediately and vacate the premises. For he is not to make contact under any circumstances with a female. But then how is he supposed to look for a spouse? Is he supposed to look only within his mahrams? Huh? That's some... Yeah? You are we supposed to be playing those games? What? Yeah, which game? Qadi Sahab? Kaun si? Guidance. Don't worry, I'm gonna message Qadi Sahab for what's the guidance? Huh? Qadi Sahab says meet him on the other road in the car after me. And he said wear some moisturizer on your face. Yeah, you can. Massage my face. Yeah. Qadi Sahab. This one. So Asim Hussain categorically agreed to these conditions and repented. He must seek refuge with Allah, the Almighty. You must seek refuge. Right? Or he will strike down upon thee with great vengeance. Right? Repented for his actions. It was unanimously agreed that any further incidents of improper behavior or breaking of the 4 conditions will not be tolerated and necessary action will be taken. Wah. Look, I want to highlight something here first. You know something, people don't know this, but this incident, by the way, is old. This incident is allegedly about 2 years old. Okay. So, and this girl that came to report it, they apparently shushed her up, I think. Right? Humko bhi khabar hai. I heard that some garbar, this is obviously, I too am behind the scenes, behind the curtains. Remember, these things reach me as well. So this incident has been going on about 2 years ago. Why the sudden announcement now? And since this is a matter of Islam, the honor of Islam, was it not the honor of Islam 2 years ago? So why not raise it when it happened? Why shush everybody up, hide the details, agree behind closed doors to certain things, and then release it 2 years later, acting like it's just happened? I don't know whether something else has happened, but my point is, the point. Let's point pe aate hain, point pe. Let's get to the point, right? The point is that, look, this kind of stuff, I want to ask something. Look, let's be consistent. If we're going to condemn abuse and say that this is, which first of all, I agree we should condemn abuse. I agree we should. But first of all, I don't know whether in this incident there is abuse or not, because the one letter I read was about the girl saying how she was in love with him. So that didn't sound like, I don't know, that what I read didn't sound like abuse. That just sounded more like she was upset with the rejection, that I think he wasn't going to marry her or something. And obviously, the steps, his romantic steps up to it, she was upset. So whilst the main thing is, gotta be careful now. So we need to condemn abuse. But tell me, I want to ask something. Sheikh Asrar or all these other mashayikh, you telling me they don't know about the abuse going on in their local masjids? You telling me they don't know? I refuse to believe this one. This one not nice. They know. I guarantee you they know. I'm so certain that they know about the abuse going on. You know what? They cover up. This is the problem. And I mean clear-cut abuse. I don't mean like this, like she loved him and he loved her and then, he didn't love her. I don't mean this kind of stuff, like whether it is abuse or not, I don't know. But I mean clear, like physical abuse, sexual abuse. I mean actual, very clear with molestation, stuff like this. That they are, unfortunately, the Muslim community, is unfortunately riddled with this kind of nonsense and this kind of despicable crimes. But yet people, they all turn a blind eye. They don't investigate the masjids. They don't call out against anything going on in the masjids. They don't call out against certain top imams where there have been actual crimes, like where people have actually gone to the police. I don't mean they've just gone to social media. People have gone to the police, but they will just cover people, or by cover up, they will just turn a blind eye. Like, we don't want to get involved, they'll say, because he's got a following, or he's like this, and I don't want to. And I just think, like, what the hell? Like, there should be consistency. And somebody said on that post that, because they felt threatened by Imam Asim's popularity. I don't know whether that was the case, but somebody wrote that on one of the things. Right, so, and now I think Imam Asim has made a public apology, not to say that, I'm not by any way, don't get me wrong, I'm not justifying his actions by any standard. I'm not, but what I'm trying to say is, I think, first of all, these people, what kind of policing is this? This is stupid. We have a police force for a reason. They need to say, look, if somebody comes to you and they say, look, somebody touched me or they did this, you need to tell them, look, go to the police then. Because they will conduct a detailed, objective investigation. Not your own little, you must pray your 5 daily prayers and somebody will monitor you, and are you doing the wudu properly? And before the wudu there is the istinja, you naughty, I don't know. That lota was half empty when you took it in, I'm not so sure, these kind of things, like, you can't become no bloody Taliban. Like, we're going to investigate people's private lives. Are they praying properly? I forbid you from entering social media. Abe tu kon hai? What the hell? You're not no bloody court. You can't be imposing your version of the Sharia on people. This ain't the Taliban, So I think this stuff is just ridiculous. Like, trying to impose. Yes, if somebody's done wrong, then you ought to say, look, go to the police. Well, you ought not try to cover it up to start off with, right? By saying, don't worry, because this incident is apparently 2 years old. So they've been covering it up for 2 years anyway. So I don't even see, this like, we've been covering it for 2 years, but now we're going to announce it. Because the honor of Islam. What honor of Islam? And then I think in the actual statement, they just said, I think there was somewhere in one of the statements that's saying, well, unfortunately, this was the will of God. I thought, shabash. Bas yahi kami thi. This was all that was left. Let's throw God under the bus as well. The only thing left now was just God. I said, well, why leave God alone? Let's throw God under this bus as well. Well, this was the will of God. What the... No, mate. God did not say set those fingers forth. God did not say conduct these ridiculous, dumb councils of yours or these kind of religious policing that you're doing. God didn't say do any of this. Don't blame God for any of this. Blame yourselves. Lumu anfusakum. Right? You guys are to blame. So, and then I would say be consistent. invest, call out wherever you hear it. Don't just be like, oh, he's got a following, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna call him out, I'm not gonna, you come across cases, people say things, and they'll say, oh, there's allegedly such and such Peer Sahib, and such Peer Sahib, and this has been going on, and this has been going on, but now nobody will come forth because you'll hear that people have been threatened. And in some of these cases, they have gone to the police. And I say, well done. If there is abuse, then go to the police. But my point is, those people who come up as, like Mullah Umar of the Taliban, we're going to hold our panchayat. And in this panchayat decrees that you must pray your 5 daily prayers. You must not go on Instagram. But you must find a wife. But you must not make contact with anybody not related to you. Yeah. I don't know, man. What is happening, man? What is happening? Tension, huh? Tension. Need like a head massage. Huh? I need Qari Sahib to come and give me like a head massage. This was the Mufti Masala. So I just think, look, it's embarrassing to see this from like people like Sheikh Asrar. To act like we're conducting these investigations. You don't need to conduct investigations that are so, first of all, these are silly outcomes. This is so, and if this was so serious, you should have highlighted it when it happened, not sit on it for 2 years and then highlight it as like a tsunami just broken out. And then thirdly, come out with a dumb solution like, say, pray your 5 daily prayers. So I think all of these things seriously need to be addressed. And people need to, people need to also be wary, with some of these, this ishq kamina, hi, ishq kamina, hi. बहुत कमीना है इश्क. Oof. यार. So many people lay slain in this path. डर के चलते हैं यार. We're so frightened. People need to, all this, the imams and all this, and you get people, by the way, you get loads of people. Somebody asked, do you ever get messages? Oh, no, I don't actually. I get a few catfish now and then, trying it, they try it. But the thing is, I think, in general, Asim has been, I think, he's, been slaughtered now on social media. I think he should just marry that girl that was in love with him. That would be a kind of like a weird, twisted, but a kind of love story. He could say, hey, I'm back. And he just leaves a glove. That could be a symbol, like a glove. But yeah, so people, तबाह करने के और भी कई रास्ते थे फराज, न जाने उन्हें क्यों मोहब्बत का ही ख्याल आया. हाय 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 हाय. This Romeo. When's art thou Romeo? This game too dangerous, too dangerous. So people, whoa, it's 12:30, right? It's been awesome. May Allah make things easy for everyone. I think, we need to, obviously, I think, what, there is a big issue with people, I think, finding relationships and doing things like that. There is a big issue. People, I forgot to say, I've even made mut'a halal for you guys. Jao, yaar, jao. I've even made mut'a. Or kya pooch rahe ho yaar? What else do you want? Still, these low-level games. Behave. All this, what else do you want now? But on a serious note, I think there is a lot of difficulty amongst Muslims finding relationships, doing things like this. I think it is a very difficult, tricky situation. It's a slippery situation. Slippery slope, right? But they can go to these websites. I think I don't know which ones to recommend, because to be honest with you, I'm sure they've got weird people on all of them. But I'm sure if you're sensible about it, look, if you're trying to hook up with somebody and he comes across really weird, like in a conversation you're saying, so what do you do, and you're it's like sticking a finger up your nose, or this one a bit weird, so then I think that's time for a sharp exit, time for a cool, sharp right? So I think in that case, you don't need to repeatedly meet the person. Just take the hint that this one no good, this one. And I think but there is a crisis. I can see there is a crisis of people trying to find relationships. And I think with the day and age, social media and people on it and this and that, and young blood, the testosterone, the testosterone, it's like I was speaking once to somebody, and I think she was some kind of, I don't know whether she had a background in science or not background as in worked in science or something, but anyway, she worked with maybe lab reports or blood reports or something like this anyway. But she was saying that, I knew that my husband was cheating. So I said, well, how did you know that? It's always good to ask. You need to get tips. You need to take pointers. Acha. How did you find out? So, always note to self, beware of, how did you... you need to make good notes. It's what... Zalim dunya hai yaar, zalim dunya. It's a बहुत पापी संसार है. It doesn't let you be. You need to take tips from other people. So I was like, so how did you find out? So she said, well, I knew that his blood levels show that he's got high testosterone. He's got normal testosterone. So if he's not doing the jiggy, he's not at home, then it must be outside. I thought, wow, kya ijtihad hai yaar, kya ijtihad hai. I like it. I thought, okay, so I thought, whoa, but you hear some interesting stories. When you ask people, I always ask people, how did you find out? So they'll tell you all kinds of things, I planted a bug over here, a recording device, I got into his phone. Every time you're like, acha, you need to up the defense mechanisms. No. I'm joking. Huh? Kuch nahi sivaye musalsal fareeb hai. It's nothing but perpetual deception. कुछ नहीं सिवाय मुसलसल फरेब है. देखा है जिंदगी को निहायत करीब से. That I have seen this world up close and near. It is nothing but deception, people. Sab maya hai, sab maya. So I always just begin by saying, well, all men are dogs. That's a disclaimer. I'm joking. Right, so anyway, people, it's been awesome. and any ARC sessions, yeah, we should do an ARC session, inshallah, coming in Feb. Let's do an ARC session, so you get an opportunity to turn up. Not next week, I think the week after. Let me have a word, see the availabilities and things like that in case something else is going on. So maybe in 2 weeks' time, we could do a live Q&A from the ark in the rock. Going down, people, going down. So guys, inshallah, I think we should call it a wrap. It's gone half midnight. I'm going to do a world tour. Yeah, I could do a world tour. Begin with what? Las Vegas, then go to only the key places, only the places that count. No, I mean, why not world tour? Why not? Why not? Why? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? Of course, of course. I think it's when the time comes. For now, inshallah, any issues, reach out to me, people. By the way, Facebook Messenger is the best way to reach out. Okay, so I know my other Facebook page. Do like it. By the way, like it, yaar. Kya कंजूस सालों कंजूस कहेंगे. You know, it's like people go and, you know, you see some of these people and they have like hundreds of thousands of likes. You think, yaar, hi re kismat. How do I buy likes? ये क्या होता? कैसे कारी साहब? Qari Sahab, what do I have to sacrifice to get you to teach me these tips? I have to meet you in a car down the road. Okay. I'll be coming. Bring body lotion. Okay. Okay. So, like the page. Yaar, kya kanjoosi hai? What is this holding back, you tight-fisted? But any issues, you can message me on my the public profile, but it's easier for me to respond on Facebook Messenger, especially with voice notes. Snapchat, Malm 2014, Malm, MALM 2014. Instagram as well, Mufti Abu Layth. And of course, if you haven't liked my YouTube page by now, maro. Let me stroke those faces. Get that. If you haven't liked my YouTube page by now, then what purpose does your life even serve? I need you to really examine your life. But of course, people, like it, inshallah. I'll leave you all with that. Have an awesome week. Take very good care of yourselves, inshallah. Much love, people. Chumma, 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 so chumma going out to all, right? To each and all, including including those who have fallen in the path of love. But you know, so many victims in this path, right? A group kiss to all of them. Okay, right. Much love. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.